Welcome back to another episode of the Cycle Podcast, the show where we cover 4 trending MLB topics in 20 minutes or less. Joining us today is a first-time co-host, Zach Gerlach. How are you doing today, buddy?
Good. How's it going? Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to hear your feedback, hear some of your thoughts. We met through your brother. We hung out at the flea market. I was actually buying this jersey. We got talking ball a little bit. So when I needed a co-host, I decided to call Jay, have you fill in, and I'm super thankful to have you here today.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. It's great to be here. Like I said, I'm really excited. Always fun to talk ball.
Absolutely. Let's get right into our first topic. Our first topic today is the failures of the Team USA in the WBC. And I say failures fairly loosely. I don't think getting to the championship is a failure, but with the amount of hype surrounding this team, how loaded the roster was, and the expectations truly being bring home a championship or bust, I say it's a failure. I also say that because I don't think the team lived up to how well they could have played in this tournament. You had guys like Cal Raleigh, Alex Bregman, Aaron Judge at times really struggle at the plate when we were counting on really serious contributions from them. But like we were saying before we got on the show, it's really difficult to blame those guys. It's hard to blame Nolan McLean, who maybe was in a little bit over his head in the championship game. When you have guys like Tarik Skubal, who, when announced, was expected to be the true anchor of this rotation, ends up throwing 3 innings against Great Britain, heads back home, and then comes and hangs around the locker room, hangs out around the dugout when he's no longer a part of the team. So my first question to you is, how much do you think team chemistry played a role in the championship loss, and I would say their struggles throughout the entire tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it played a huge role because on paper, just like you said, we had a super team. We had the Avengers that were going up against Thanos. This was the team that was going to win it all. And I feel like they were kind of focused on contract stipulations as well because team chemistry is one of the biggest things you can have. You can have an all-star squad, but if they don't mesh well, it won't work. But I think contract stipulations kind of got in the way. Obviously, we saw that with Skubal. We saw that with Mason Miller not going in on one of those games, and I feel like that was kind of the priority when you realize that the World Baseball Classic is the biggest tournament in all of baseball. It's a showcase for all of the teams. It's practically the Olympics, and I feel like you should have given it your all, which I don't think they did, simply because there could have been pieces that were aligned better, both when it comes to the team as well as management and coaching.
Yeah, and I was actually talking about this on a more recent podcast. Why is it that Tarik Skubal's on the roster when he's truly not committed? He said that my commitment is for 1 game for 55 pitches. And then I went through and looked up a lot of the other American pitchers who didn't join the team. Andrew Abbott, Hunter Green, George Kirby, Logan Gilbert, Max Fried, all had an opportunity and said no. So perhaps it's a league-wide issue, specifically with American-born players, because the Team USA seems to tolerate it more. When you have teams like Venezuela, who clearly don't have as much talent top to bottom, but all of their talent came out. Almost every elite player from the Dominican Republic was on that squad and played full-time. So it is, in turn, it's a bit of a disappointment, I think. I think we probably should have handled the majority of the teams we played, not losing to teams like Italy. So my next question for you, when it comes to management, obviously Mark DeRosa, how much of him do you think was sort of reflecting in the play on the field? So we have him not knowing what the rules were on the game against Italy. We have him not using guys. We have him playing into some of these contract stipulations. How much of that do you think played a factor overall?
I feel like it kind of played into both of the hands. Obviously, knowing the rules of the tiebreaker, it's like, I don't remember which year it was, a few years ago, when the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl and the coin toss, neither team knew what the rules were.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like obviously that's a big part of it. But I feel like he did make some pretty good moves. Obviously playing Gunnar in that game against Severino. Obviously, that ended up working out for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I just feel like it wasn't as well kept or as well thought out of a team as it should have been. Like I said, when you have a team like the Avengers that are really, these are a lot of heavy hitters on here. Even, you had Schoolball that treated it like an all-star game. And I feel like that starts with DeRosa with coaching, right? Setting the right expectation to first being judge, being the team captain, and relaying that to the rest of the team. Hey, this is not an all-star game. This is, the World Baseball Classic, and everyone in the world is going to be, watching this, and this is the biggest event we can do.
Yeah, I agree. And we will continue with Mark DeRosa in our second topic as we talk about what the 2029 WBC team will look like. Our second topic, as we said before, is going to be the roster construction and what does this team look like in 2029. Obviously, with this team, you have a lot of last hurrahs, so to say. Guys like Bryce Harper, guys like Paul Goldschmidt, guys like Clayton Kershaw, who was warming up in the bullpen while we were losing to Team Italy. And I do also have some guys on this roster I expect maybe not to return to the roster, whether it be because of play or because there is someone coming through the ranks who I think will surpass them by 2029. I would expect Aaron Judge to be back, not in the premier player role because he will be, I believe, 34 or 35 by that point, maybe even 36. But I do expect him to be there just because he's Aaron Judge. Going into this one, people were calling him Captain America. And just like Mike Trout, maybe in the last WBC, a guy who is there for leadership and a veteran presence. I expect Bobby Witt and Roman Anthony to be centerpieces on this team. Both of them showed it, along with PCA in this one. Bobby mostly with his defense, but if he had another crack at it, I would expect his bat to improve a lot. Roman Anthony, perhaps the MVP of this team, and he will still be extremely young. And then some newcomers I would expect to see, and if they're not there, frankly, it would be a travesty or something tragic had happened. Nick Kurtz, Connor Griffin, Jackson Merrill. I would all expect to be making their debuts with Team USA. And of course, pitching, you'd still expect it to be Paul Skeens at the top of that rotation. Perhaps Tarek Skubal will decide he wants to play a whole WBC this time. I'd expect Crochet to be there as well, as by that time he will be past the beginning of his new contract with the Red Sox, probably have a little bit more leniency on some of those contract issues. Now, my first question to you is, anybody I miss, anybody you would really like to see or expect to see on that 2029 team?
No, I mean, I think you hit it spot on. I think the interesting thing about having it every few years is, obviously our next one is going to be in 2029, is we could have a breakout star that makes a big impact next year. I mean, Roman Anthony, obviously, just tying back to him, he could have had a spectacular year, and he did still have a good year had he, not been injured. But obviously, tying back to what you said about being the MVP of that team, I mean, he was almost an afterthought, and he came in. We could have a breakout player, even in the next year, 2 years or so, that could be taking that Roman Anthony-esque role that kind of just jumps in a little bit. I feel like, with Bobby Witt as well, what he showcased with the WBC, he left it all on the field. And I feel like that's going to be what they're looking for next time around. Young players that can play really well. They leave their heart on the field. And like you said earlier, maybe it was Venezuela. Maybe there were teams that left a little bit more heart. I feel like Bobby Witt left everything on there. Nick Kurtz is another great one. Obviously, very young player, shows a lot of talent with plenty of pop. I think he could be, stepping up and in that conversation as well, not to mention Connor Griffin and a lot of those younger players. But yeah, I think Aaron Judge is going to be taking that Mike Trout role, like you said. I mean, he's going to be there. I don't think he's going to be – I mean, he could be the captain, but I don't think he's going to be taking as prominent of a role as he did this time.
Yeah. And with the pitching staff, I would expect, like I said, Trey Savage, maybe to join that group that will be maybe in their veteran years. A guy like Bubba Chandler was one I had on my notes. But I do expect to see a change at the top, Mark DeRosa. Perhaps it's Andy Pettitte that takes over. Perhaps it's Dave Roberts or some major league manager who coaches some of these guys throughout the year. But I think that he treated this like you were talking about, like an all-star game. I think he treated it that way. When you have guys like Ernie Clement coming in, when you're benching some of your elite talent, putting Paul Goldschmidt at first in a game against Italy that he later admitted he thought didn't matter. We end up losing that game. We end up being the number 2 seed from our pool. And then had that Mexico game been like a 4-3 Mexico win, we would have missed the elimination round altogether because a manager didn't care enough. And that does trickle down. And I think, like you said, there needs to be a new identity of guys who are willing to leave it all out on the field, really give it 100%, and treat this tournament like the Venezuelans treat it, like the Dominican players treat it. And I don't say they have to be as, showy. They don't have to do all of that, but you have to treat it like we're trying to win this for our country. They want it really bad. We need to want it more. And if you want to bring that mentality, you need to bring in a manager who's a little more cutthroat, who isn't just going to throw guys out on the field to give them their playtime. So a lot to see over the next few years, like you're saying. But with that, let's move back to this year and predict some division winners. For our third topic, I'm going to be giving my division winner and wild card picks. And then, Zach, you can react to them. Tell me where I'm right. Tell me where I'm wrong. I know there's one pick in here that will upset you as a fan of New York, but I'll leave that to you. I'll start off in the American League with the East, where I've got the Boston Red Sox, primarily because of their starting rotation and what I saw from guys like Wilyer Abreu and Roman Anthony in the WBC. I don't think there is a starting rotation better than them in the MLB this season. There are some other teams that may be as good. For example, I think Seattle may be as good. I think at times, if they're healthy, Los Angeles may be as good. But I don't think there's a rotation better than theirs. And when you add in what they have in the bullpen, I don't think there's a staff who is better than theirs. Moving on to the Central, I've got my Kansas City Royals. Yes, it's a homer pick, but if you look at the Central, it really is wide open. I never buy into Detroit. We've seen them sort of slide late in the season in recent years, and the Royals in recent years have continued to play strong, even through injuries late in the season. In the AL West, I have the Mariners taking that one. I expect them to roll into this year on the back of that staff coming in fully healthy. Brian Wu having his breakout year last year, I expect him to be solidly in the Cy Young talks. So when you also have teams like Texas and Houston, who I think are on the decline fairly quickly, that should be, of all these divisions, for me, the easiest one for them. In the NL East, I have the Mets. Last year, I correctly predicted that the Mets would miss the postseason. This year, I have them winning the division pretty firmly. On to the NL Central, where I have the Cubs, though I think the Reds could be a sneaky thorn in their side throughout the season. And I think Milwaukee still shows up, despite losing quite a few pieces. And of course, you have the Pirates, who could be pesky. I don't expect them to be in playoff contention, but they are a team who I can see late in the season as they really get their steam going, as some of these younger guys continue to progress, that could bully some of the top teams in the division. In the wild card from the American League, I have Toronto as the first overall, a team I think is loaded, a team we saw make a very deep playoff run, come within a few key moments of winning a World Series. Right behind them, I do have Detroit. Like I said, I don't always buy into them, but I think with the AL East being such a difficult division, who is going to beat each other up a lot, I don't love anybody out of the AL West other than the Mariners. So I think Detroit, having the Twins, having the White Sox in the division, will pick up a lot of wins and keep themselves in there. And then the third, which is maybe the surprise team for some, for others, maybe not much of a surprise, is the Orioles. They've acquired some really, really strong pieces this offseason. I think their pitching staff is going to struggle, but they have a lot of bats in that lineup who I trust to get the job done. When you're talking Kobe Mayo, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, now Pete Alonso, you have guys possibly like Samuel Basallo coming up and playing a full rookie year. They're going to be a tough team to contend with in the American League. And a wild card, I have Arizona, who I always buy high on. And once again this year, I'm buying a ton of Arizona stock. Milwaukee at the second wild card. Like I said, they're always somehow scrappy. They have a legitimate superstar in their lineup in Jackson Chourio, and their pitching staff whoever they piece together always seems to perform. And finally, the Phillies on their last run. I think they've got the boys back together one last time. They're going to take another shot at winning a World Series. And then that would be it until they sort of move some pieces around and bring some younger talent in. So feel free to go a minute over, even if you have to. I took up a lot of time. So where do you think I'm wrong? Where do you think I'm right? And tell me why.
So, I mean, I feel like the NL were pretty much on the same page. I mean, NL East, I think the Mets too. I feel like they've made plenty of moves this offseason. I think they're kind of finding their identity as a team. I feel like last year was kind of tough because, we had some changes in the clubhouse and everything else, but I feel like they really solidify it. NL Central, I had the Cubs also. I feel like another team that really can, if they keep their momentum, could go pretty far. Obviously, we have PCA who just signed his extension. May see, if he can stay consistent and maybe not drop off after the All-Star break, we can start to see more out of him. NL West with the Dodgers. I mean, please, that is like the easiest. Over to the AL. The AL was tough for me to not just say the Yankees, but I feel like the Yankees do have a decent shot just when their pitching staff is healthy. Trying to not be biased here, but
It's okay.
I feel like when their pitching staff is healthy, Red Sox, I mean, I had them in one of my wild card spots. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
So AL Central, this was tough for me because the Royals, I feel like, are a team that's consistently there. They're showing up every day. They're always, doing well. But I feel like the Tigers, they're not quite there yet, but I feel like they have a solid enough. They have decent pitching. They have a great farm system, and I feel like we're going to start seeing more of that
Max
this year.
Clark,
Obviously,
Kevin
with Max
McGonigal.
Clark and different, exactly, Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark. I feel like we could see a few guys have some breakout years. Obviously, like Dingler, maybe Parker Meadows could do well this year, and I feel like that could kind of propel them a little bit higher. AL West, I agree. I had the Mariners as well. I don't remember if you had them as AL West or a wild card,
West,
but
yeah.
I feel like obviously having a guy like Cal Raleigh, having Brian Wu, I feel like they have a lot of pieces to kind of make it there. I don't think that's going to be a runaway. I feel like it's going to be kind of close in the AL West. It's very tough to say though. My wild cards, I pretty much had similar to you. In the first wild card spot, I actually had the Phillies. I feel like the Phillies, obviously same thing, bringing their pieces back together. Obviously, you have Harper, you have Schwarber. They lost Castellanos, but I feel like they've, kind of moved some pieces around. I had them in my first NL wild card. Second one, I have the Brewers. The Brewers, I feel like, could be sneaky. They're a young team. They can hit for contact. They can hit for power, like you said. I mean, and they play sound defensive baseball, which I feel like they focus a lot on fundamentals. And, people were making jokes last year and the year before that they were going to make it simply on the power of friendship. But I feel like they're a team that you don't expect to do well, but they're young, they're quick, they're athletic. And I feel like, defensively, it can kind of get them there. And then the third NL wild card, I had the Diamondbacks. I feel like that's another team. They're just consistently there. Whether they're just there or they just make it out, I feel like they're always in the playoff picture. In the past 2 years, I feel like they put a good team on the field, and I think they can kind of make that wild card. Just rambling off AL wild card, I had Red Sox in the one, like I said, just behind the Yankees. Really, really not by much. I feel like, again, trying to be unbiased, I feel like the Yankees, once we get Cole back, Rodon, I feel like firming up that rotation a little bit. Maybe if we call up Spencer Jones, but I feel like the Red Sox are right behind them.
Yeah.
Great rotation, same thing, great farm system. We can see Roman Anthony have a great year this year. I feel like we're going to start seeing more of those guys come up as well, just because of how deep their farm system is. AL wild card, I had the Rangers as well. I feel like they're close.
I know, yeah.
No, you don't think so?
No. Well, it's tough.
No.
The Rangers is tough.
It's
DeGrom, Seager played, I believe, 105, 110 games last year. DeGrom could win the
That's
AL
true.
Cy Young. He could end his career because he's one injury away from that.
That's true.
I mean, they moved Simeon away, which I think may be sort of adding by subtraction. They brought in, Brandon Nimmo on that deal. I don't know. I just don't think they have the firepower overall across a whole season if one of their key pieces, who always gets hurt, gets hurt.
That's why it's tough, because I feel like bringing in a guy like Nimmo, and obviously if DeGrom has a good year, because Nimmo could be sneaky. I mean, obviously you got rid of Marcus Simeon, but I mean, Nimmo was a promising guy when he played for the Mets. I mean, he's great in the clubhouse. He's great, I feel like, all around.
Yeah.
I feel like he can kind of help elevate that team. That's why I had him in there. Um, who knows? I mean, you have a team that was just, in the World Series a few years ago.
Yeah.
And they have seen a drop off, as a lot of teams do after a World Series, unless you're the Dodgers.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're kind of set for maybe a rebound or a slight rebound, maybe squeezing in that wild card spot.
And then I'm sorry, who is your third? I believe you had Boston,
They're,
you had the Rangers, and
I had the Blue Jays on this.
smart.
So
Yeah.
I feel like, obviously Vladdy on the new contract. I feel like they're another team that's kind of always on. They're never really in the 1-2 spot as far as the AL East. I feel like you have, of course, the Yankees, you have the Red Sox. This was tough for me. I had Blue Jays, or honestly the Orioles, like you said. I mean, they made a lot of acquisitions. I feel like we could see Tyler O'Neill have a pretty good year. Opening day is upon us. He's hit 5 home runs in a row now on opening day.
Yeah, I don't remember
So
if he hit it
I feel
last year,
like,
but yeah, he was at 4.
but between him and Pete, and I feel like they're another team that's just really young. I mean, you have guys like Jackson Holiday, Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, a really young team that I feel like can develop into, a strong core for them.
Yeah, I agree. We went a little bit over, which is fine because I rambled a lot. Let's get ahead and move on to who's hot. On to everybody's favorite topic, who's hot, where I am going to be showcasing one of my favorite, if not my favorite player in the MLB right now, Maikel Garcia, who wins the WBC MVP and hopefully is bringing that back home to Kansas City. Over the tournament, a 395 batting average, .97 OPS, 10 hits, 7 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, a clutch home run against Japan, the RBI in the championship, the go-ahead RBI single in the semifinal game. So pretty much every time he came up in a big spot, he came through. And if he can bring that to the Royals, in the past he's hit leadoff, he's hit fifth, he's hit sixth. Wherever he is in the lineup, he does seem to come up in a lot of big moments. And there were a lot of times for the Royals last year where he came through. Obviously was among the Royals' best players, made his first All-Star game last year. So I'm hoping that he can bring that into maybe an MVP, fringy MVP campaign, solidified All-Star type of dude. And of course, he played great defense. We saw a few different plays where he saved runs late in games, where he came up super clutch for the pitching staff. And that's how he is in Kansas City as well. So I was really excited, mostly for him to be able to showcase what us Kansas City fans have seen on the global stage. Now you have Twitter talking about him as the big breakout player of the year. You see on TikTok guys predicting him to come in top 5 in MVP voting, seemingly having just discovered him. So let me give you more time. I'm not going to go too far over this time around. Who's hot?
I'd say probably, and I hate to say it, and I know I'm going to get a lot of slack from my friends, but I feel like Roman Anthony.
Yeah.
I feel like he's another guy that people knew of, and I feel like he had a lot of hype, a lot of expectations. But you look at guys like you said, Maikel Garcia, you have maybe Caminero, that they really made their name at the WBC. Roman Anthony, you're talking about a guy who was called up last year, got injured, didn't obviously play a full season. And he was pretty much a last call for the WBC. They called him up. They were like, hey, listen, you want to represent your country? Cool. Pack your bags. Let's go. And, he really showed up. And I feel like he had more memorable moments and could argue he was maybe the MVP for the USA in the WBC. If not maybe top 2, top 3. I feel like, he's going to kind of lead this next generation of younger players. Especially talking about the depth of just the Red Sox specifically, their farm system. I feel like they're going to start to build their team around him, kind of like they were doing in the early and mid 2000s. Obviously, you had Pedroia, you had Ortiz. I feel like he's going to be kind of their identity for the team. And just seeing his performance from the WBC and seeing that carry over maybe into the MLB this year, I feel like we can have some high expectations for him.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, we were talking about earlier, I see him as a centerpiece of the next WBC team, and it's sort of changed the Red Sox whole focus. You were talking about guys like Duran and Rafael Devers supposed to be the core. They trade Rafael Devers. They talk about trading Jarren Duran. They were in pretty deep talks with the Royals. And when I heard people talking about why do you let Devers go? Why do you let Durant possibly go, it's because they've seen Roman Anthony coming through the system. They know what he's about. They have a lot of depth in their farm system, like you were saying. And I think you're absolutely right. He's going to be the centerpiece of the future of the Boston Red Sox. But hopefully for your team and the AL as a whole, hopefully he doesn't stay too hot. Hopefully he's just kind of coasts along a very average player, especially in a very tough AL East for a lot of the Rays fans who watch this as well. But with that, like we said, we can save a minute or so here. Zach, thank you so much for coming on the show this week. We really appreciate you stepping in. Hopefully we can have you on again in the future. We'd love it, man.
Definitely. I'd love it. Thank you so much. It's been a blast. Always fun to talk ball. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
We'll hear from you again. As always, remember to subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. Leave a comment. Let us know where we went wrong, where we went right. And if you have any questions that you'd like us to use as a topic on a future podcast, make sure to comment those as well. We'll see you next time.